Alright, so America has spoken. The election has concluded, and despite the Democrats hoping that those vote-in ballots were going to come in and save the day again, Donald Trump has been elected for a second term. So yeah, if you're a Democrat, you're probably looking for a way to leave the country. And if you're an immigrant, I hear the new government's got a program to speed that up for you. Now I know what you're thinking, isn't this a guitar channel? Why the hell is he talking about the election? Well, let me put it right back at you. Wouldn't the most American thing to do in this situation be to voice an opinion on something you've got nothing to do with? So whether you're here to hoot and holler that Donald Trump has denied the role of president to 2 women in 2 separate election cycles, or you're just here to scream and cry about how the election didn't go your way, let's not behave like that in this video, in this comment section. Save that for your Hassan and Vosh streams or your bloody Daily Wire videos. And yeah, this isn't here to lament or celebrate how the election went, because I mean, I'm disappointed on both sides. Like, so fucking, how are we here, right? Like the Democratic Party, you lost when you put Hillary up. Do you really think America has changed enough that not only a woman, but a woman of color was gonna get elected? She's even half Indian, so the people who have problems with that are gonna see her as an immigrant, as an African American, and as a woman. Like, it's still very much the 1960s over there, so know your country and your voter base. Appeal to what gets your votes. And on the Republican side, can we finally admit that 2020 wasn't rigged? I mean, if they rigged it that time, attained the presidency, and couldn't rig it while being in power, that doesn't add up. I know you like to say too big to rig, but let's think with our brains here. There's been no election proofing or changes to anything that would have allowed them to fake it before, and didn't allow them this time. So can we just clear that all up? Trump lost last time. It's fine, it is what it is. He won this time, so you can take solace in that. And just, we need to dial down the conspiracies just a little bit here. On this channel, I want to be a bit more grounded about all this. And I had a plan to make this video no matter who won the election. I want to talk about the election promises, the things that mattered to people, that made them vote the way that they voted, and to try and hold the government accountable for whatever comes next. Because here's a recurring problem. You get one party in, they make all these promises, things don't change substantially, but the people are just so happy and celebrating that their side won that they don't even put pressure on their own side to deliver what they promised. I mean, if you were to go off what people were saying 2 election cycles ago, the world should have ended under the first Trump presidency. And at the same time, if his goal was to make America great again, why would he need to campaign under that same slogan a second time round? Why was his 2020 presidency even needed? Why didn't he deliver on that the first time round? Isn't that what the Republicans voted him in for in 2016? So when you let things like that slide and then he comes around saying the exact same things again, it's like, what's changed in the last 8 years? You know, I've even seen on one side that people saying like the Hollywood elite, what's gonna happen to them? What's gonna happen to Big Pharma? One of the most intellectual I've ever seen posted about that. And I'll tell you what's gonna happen. Nothing. Everything's gonna stay the exact same way it is. But of course that guy gets paid to make you scared about things. So of course he's gonna say that, and of course he's gonna make you think that things are gonna change when they're not. If you really think Big Pharma is going to change, well, I know on the Republican side of things, people like to think that they all hate the vaccines and Pfizer and AstraZeneca and all that. But I mean, Trump was the one who initiated the fast track of the vaccine, and Biden carried it out. Both have the same interests. Essentially, we've got that illusion of free choice going on here because the corporations are the ones who are in charge of things. And maybe one other group of people. But no, I want this video to be a bit of a check-in on some of these key issues that hopefully later down the track we can go back and have a look at. So if you are a Republican voter and you voted on these key issues, well, let's measure and track and see how they go over the next 4 years. If they worsen compared to what's happening now, I expect that you guys will be all talking about it and that you might not even vote the same way next time. Likewise, if you're a Democrat and you care about these things and Trump does it better than Biden's been doing it, I expect you to change your vote too. We need to stop having these allegiances that seem to be for life to a party, because these often come down to how things appear socially, all of the social politics, and none of the actual tangible stuff that affects your day-to-day life for the vast majority of people. You know, we can get into how back in the day the Republicans were pro-abortion or the Democrats were pro-slavery, right? These things change over time. I think Hillary Clinton herself said that she didn't support gay marriage in 2012. But just because the party does that at that time doesn't mean that you should continue to support them no matter what for the end of time. Only support them while they support your best interests and the interests of people like you. So the first thing that was a big talking point was the current cost of living. We all know groceries are stupidly expensive, gasoline's through the roof, inflation's up, and so are the interest rates. But that's not thanks to Joe Biden, okay? There was this little thing in 2020 called COVID. Now, to deal with COVID, lockdowns were in place, so businesses weren't making money. There was also a lot of stimulus packages that went out. There was a lot of government spending to help people through the crisis. And this wasn't an America-only thing. Most of the developed world is going through massive inflation that spiked in around 2022, and most of these countries have had to raise their interest rates to deal with the inflation, to try and reduce it back to normal levels of around 2 to 3%. Now, if you're starting to think, oh, this sounds very anti-Republican, he's going after all the Democrat talking points, I just want to clarify how this stuff works. If you feel that the facts of things are going against your party, maybe do some more research into the facts, because I'm really trying to just present basic economics. So, if your groceries have gone up by double the amount that they used to be under the Trump presidency, but inflation's at, peaking at 9%. Well, a 9% on-year increase shouldn't make your grocery prices go up that much, right? No, but the price increase comes from the other side of things, bringing it down through higher interest rates. Now, corporations, supermarkets, businesses everywhere, they don't operate cash in hand all the time. They take small loans and they give it to one another. When the cash rate and the interest rates are low, they don't have to pay much interest on it. When they have to pay interest on it when the interest rates go up, they pass that on to you. That's why if you're like me and you bought property in 2021, your mortgage is probably double what it was, thanks to those fucking interest rates. So logically from there, if we curb inflation, we can start lowering the interest rates, and then prices should start stabilizing and going back to what they used to be. Now, if you look at the graphs here, 2022 is when inflation was peaking. 2022 is when the government brought in the Inflation Reduction Act. They also were increasing all the interest rates and everything to start bringing that down. And you can see the downward trend here. It is starting to get to more acceptable levels, getting closer to pre-COVID times. Because of this, earlier on in the year, people were speculating all over the world that interest rates were going to drop around the end of the year, maybe next year, depends on who you asked. So at this point, I would say that over time we need to track how inflation is going down and what interest rates are over a longer period of time. We can look at the peak of 2022 to today and draw a straight line there, and then see how it continues on. If prices go down because the inflation rate's continuing to reduce at the same rate as during the Biden economy, my bet would be that it was what they did in the year and a half and what they set up that led to the benefits that we're seeing in the economy there. If interest rates end up going back up because inflation's going up, or that rate of decrease starts to level out again, even if it's still a net benefit, and prices go down because of the 2 years the Inflation Reduction Act was going on, we have to tell the new government that they can do better, because the previous government was doing better and these guys have now run on a stronger economy. And if prices plummet and inflation plummets and interest rates go back to what they used to be, then you gotta hold the ex-Democratic Party responsible and say, next time you run, do it like these guys did. But we need to keep track of things, because these things don't occur in just like a 1 year time span. Like, you can say that the Trump economy was really good in 2016 to 2020, but as most people know, it was due largely to his change to the tax structure, which gave a lot of the higher ends big tax breaks. And that did flow on down. So in a lot of ways it's bad because the rich got richer, but in a lot of ways it's good because everyone kind of got richer. However, the only way that works is if a major event that affects the world doesn't happen in the following years, because when they're doing that, that is essentially government spending. Now, coming out of 2007 and 2008, Obama was trying to fix things after the global financial crisis, and you can see on this graph here, the government deficit was steadily reducing back to zero. They were getting less negative. And while there are pros and cons to a government being in debt, it's not always a bad thing, and the right amount of debt is hotly debated. The fact that he was increasing it and the economy was continually getting stronger up to 2016 was a good thing. And the fact that Trump spent so much was a bit of a frivolous thing. It was not a safe move, and it only would kind of work as long as the next government, whether his or someone else's, kind of tightened their belts a bit. But of course COVID happened, so that's been a big contributing factor because we were already running such a massive deficit and then would have to go into further deficit spending to keep people afloat once they can't work anymore. So it's good to track these things over time because every single politician is going to point to the other side and say, you did this, no, you did that. Or when I took office on, I was going to say January 7th, end of January 2021, you gave me the economy in this state, but it's also like, well, what were you doing before that? And how was the government before you doing it before that? And the government before them? It's all linked together. And they all point the finger at one another to deflect what they've done or what their side has done. So things to keep track of. Interest rates, inflation, government deficit, and the unemployment rate's another one here. You can see it's been steadily going in this direction through Biden. Obviously, at the peak of COVID, it was massive because non-essential workers couldn't work. So, it's a bit up in the air. The other thing is, if we are going to talk about the unemployment rate, I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but there's been arguments from the right wing lately that if you are employed but you're doing a lot of part-time casual jobs just because you have to make ends meet, that's a bad thing and it's not being shown in the unemployment numbers. So I'm not necessarily disagreeing that full-time employment's preferable, that people aren't struggling or anything like that, but I don't think we can see that directly from the unemployment numbers. And in 4 years, if the unemployment numbers look better or worse, we should also be maybe thinking about looking into a statistic that covers both full-time employment, part-time employment, people who have to work overtime to make ends meet, things like that to really gauge how the average person's doing. Another thing I want to briefly touch on, and I think this is another big factor in the voting, was the no new wars kind of aspect, that Trump under his 2016 to 2020 presidency didn't incite any more wars or didn't start anything new. And while that is an admirable fact by itself, it seems a little bit low resolution. Yeah, it seems a little like this.
By your logic, I could claim that this rock keeps tigers away.
Oh, how does it work?
It doesn't work.
Uh-huh.
It's just a stupid rock. I don't see any tigers around here, do you?
Lisa, I want to buy your rock.
Now, yeah, it's a novelty thing to say for sure, but at the end of the day, peace in these countries is what we want to aim for. Less foreign involvement sounds good, unless it's for necessary reasons. Should we have not gotten involved in World War II? Should we just let that little Adolphy guy do his thing? Probably not. And yeah, to this effect, I know America did launch 50 or 60 missiles towards Syria during Trump's presidency, and that was the first time America had been involved in that war. So while it wasn't starting a new war, it was getting freshly involved. And Trump also ordered the assassination of an Iranian minister. So, and then while all this was going on, like Russia's annexation of I think Crimea, Donbass, and all that stuff that was happening was uncontested under the Trump presidency. Like, nothing was stopped. Putin just didn't start invading Ukraine until the Biden presidency, but whether that's directly related to Trump or not, or other factors, it's hard to say. So of course, if new wars start in the world under this Trump presidency, of course all that goes out the window and it really shouldn't be held to any serious degree for the next election. But hey, if there is no new wars starting for the next one, maybe there's some truth to it. And also, we can't forget that no new wars is one thing, but foreign involvement should be considered as a whole. And I think with Israel-Palestine the way it is, that's going to be a big factor. I think neither side was really going to do anything to help the Gazans out of their situation or stop Israel from committing war crimes. So we should be putting pressure to come to some sort of solution, whether it's two-state or anything else. And once again, if this isn't happening, people need to be up in arms about it. Another big one was abortion and women's rights in general. So the decision on Roe versus Wade, that's not going to be changed anytime under Trump. And at the same time, he said he's going to leave the decision to the states. If he comes out with any kind of abortion ban, hold him responsible. Now, the last thing that was a big talking point that I don't think I'm going to get into was immigration statistics. Well, that and crime. But because neither side even agrees on what the actual numbers are and no one has any transparency about anything, I feel like it's a bit of a waste. Like, you argue that the crime stats are getting better, but then people say, well, you don't know what it's like in my city. But also, your country is 330 freaking million people, so every city is going to be changing and different. You can find an anecdote for anything. And if you don't believe the government, well then, there's no way we can have a healthy discussion about that. So I'm going to stick way out of that one. So yeah, there's just so many things that went into this election cycle and the discussions on it that are just fucking brain dead. Like people on the left saying things like, Well, apparently, a rapist gets more respect in this world than a woman. And it's like, you're missing the point. You're fueling the fire as to why Republicans would vote for Trump, especially the center ones. And then on the other side, it's like, well, Kamala wants to perform trans surgeries on prison inmates. But then anyway, that was always going to be a state decision, not federal. So if you look to California, it's probably going to happen anyway. Voting for Trump didn't do anything in that regard. So whether it's that or whether it's other issues, people just don't seem to know a lot about why the country's in the state it's in, why the world is in the state it's in, what is the fault of the entire world or related to things happening around the world and what's America specific, what happens at local, state, and federal levels. There's just a lot of cult of personality or social politics, group identity, like, trans issues on one side are big and the nuclear family, traditional values, sure. And then on the other side, it's like, did the Democrats learn nothing from Hillary's basket of deplorable shit in 2016 or 15 or whatever that was? Alienating one side and calling them, like, filth and degenerates. It's not how you win votes. But yeah, those are my thoughts on it, and I'm really just bookmarking this with some interesting statistics that I think people might like to see, some thoughts on how it all actually works that isn't too partisan. Of course, I've got my beliefs, and they probably slip through a little bit, but hopefully we can check back on this in a few years and see how things are tracking. Remember, none of these governments have your interests in mind. They probably only have their corporations and their donors in mind, so no matter which side you're fighting for, fight for your fellow countrymen.